Here's a couple of interesting facts that appear not to be related, but they kind of are. Did you know that the bathtub was invented in 1850? Did you know that the telephone was invented in 1875? Which, if you put those two facts together, means that for 25 years, you could have had a very peaceful, relaxing bath without the phone going off all the time. It never fails, doesn't it? Just when you think you can finally relax, take it easy, be at peace. The phone rings, or the doorbell rings, or the kids start crying out for something, or the water pipe breaks, or the boss calls from the office and needs something. Peace is a precious commodity, and it is so elusive sometimes. H.G. Wells was one of the best educated, most creative men of our time. He was also an atheist. He said in his autobiography, "I cannot adjust my life to secure any fruitful peace. Here I am, 65, still seeking for peace. Dignified peace is just a hopeless dream." Well, for an atheist, it is, but not for us. Peace is a beautiful word, is it not? It is a word that is a stranger to many people in the world around us today. The fast-paced life that many of us lead provides us with an unprecedented measure of material possessions, but it does not provide us with peace. Stress, it seems like, is our constant companion. Anxiety haunts our dreams. What if we should be downsized out of a job? What if we were ill for a prolonged period of time? What if our next project is a failure? The disciples were not the only ones to long for peace in a raging storm. Where do we find peace? That is the longing of every human heart. The experience of the disciples is an experience we all have. Out in a boat, in a terrible storm, and no peace in sight. You remember this scene well, I'm sure. Jesus and his disciples decided to cross the Sea of Galilee by boat, and suddenly a terrible storm came up. The winds howled and the waves beat against their boat to the point that it began filling up with water. The disciples began to despair and to panic. And there's Jesus sleeping in the back of the boat. Sleeping through the whole storm. But how dare he? How can he? Well, he has some peace that they haven't gotten tuned into yet, because he has a direct connection that makes him not worry about all those incidental things. I wonder how many people toss and turn in their bed each night, not because of a storm on the outside, but a storm on the inside. So the disciples woke Jesus up. In their disturbed state of mind, they asked him, "Do you not care if we get killed out here?" And Mark tells us simply that Jesus rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Then Jesus turned and he said to those disciples, "Why are you afraid? Have you no faith? Don't you know who's in the back of the boat with you?" Mark tells us that those disciples were filled with awe. Now, these are the people who know Jesus better than anybody. And they said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" They ought to know. They will know. There are three elements in this picture that Mark has painted for us that we need to ponder, I think. The first is the fury of the storm. Storms are a part of life. Some days are pleasant and non-challenging and non-threatening, but as we noted, that weather can change rapidly. Soon thunder is crashing around us and our tiny craft is tossed on the wave of life's uncertainty. Of course, storm is a relative term. Each of us has to give our own definition to what the nature of the storm is for us in our lives. Mary Ellen Clark's storm was a strange physical problem that threatened her life's goal. We're getting ready now, looking at a huge international event over in France, which is the Olympics. The Olympics are coming up. Mary Ellen Clark was an Olympian. She was one of the U.S. swimming team's premier divers. She began diving as a child. Natural talent and tenacious hard work moved her into the ranks of the country's best competitive divers. That makes it almost unbelievable to think that she suffers from a dizzying condition called vertigo. Imagine getting up on that high dive platform and standing on the edge to dive when vertigo hits. I mean, incredible, horrible. She experienced her first attack after a dive at a college meet in Australia back in 1988. After plunging into the water, it hit. Now she's down in the water like 30 feet, and the vertigo hits. She doesn't know up from down. She doesn't even know how to find her way out of the water. As she would later write, if you asked a scriptwriter to concoct the worst condition to afflict a competitive diver, a really imaginative scenarist might come up with vertigo. Because her vertigo episodes are so rare, Mary Ellen did not visit a doctor to find out what was wrong. Over the next few years, she moved up in the ranks of divers, eventually winning the bronze at the 1992 Olympics. But while training for the 1996 Olympics, Mary Ellen had another episode of this frightening disorientation. Thank you, Michael. It was then that the doctors diagnosed her with vertigo. She knew that her days as a diver might soon be over. She tried every medical treatment available, but nothing worked. One night, in despair, Mary Ellen called a friend, Steve Duvall, and poured out her sadness. Steve simply asked her, Mary Ellen, what is the worst possible scenario you can imagine? Mary Ellen answered, that I'll never dive again. Then Steve asked, can you accept that? Mary Ellen didn't know how to answer that question. After she had hung up, she began thinking about Philippians chapter 4, verses 12 and 13. I have learned the secret, Paul says, of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. This is an inspiring and comforting pair of verses for any of us. But it sparked in Mary Ellen a very different question. Could she not do something through him who gave her strength? Could God give her the strength to not dive again and still be content? Mary Ellen credits her parents with giving her the answer. They had taught her long before that her faith in God was more important than anything else in life. She knew that she could trust God no matter whether she dived again or not. And if you are an Olympic lover, you know that Mary Ellen Clark did overcome her vertigo. She went on to win a bronze medal in the 1996 Summer Olympics. She went down in history as the oldest diver to ever win in her event with vertigo. Mary Ellen Clark called her storm was vertigo. For you and me, maybe something totally different. It might be the failure of a marriage. It might be a serious health problem. It might be concern over a young person in our family. It might be the loss of a loved one. The only certainty in life is that sooner or later we will all confront our storm. That is the first element in this picture, the fury of the storm. The second element is the fear of the disciples. These were not inexperienced sailors. Many of them were fishermen who'd fished that lake all their lifetime and experienced a lot of storms. But this storm was different, and they were terrified. Anybody in this room that's never been afraid? I kind of doubt it. If you've never been afraid, there's something unnatural going on there. I mean, it happens. The artist Rembrandt once painted a canvas titled Storm on the Sea of Galilee. Examining the painting carefully, you'll note that there are 14 men in the boat, the 12 disciples and Jesus. Oh, that only makes 13. The 14th person in the boat that Rembrandt painted in there was himself. We all know what it is like to be afraid. Maybe we all know what it means to be on the verge of panic. So did a woman that Hazel B. Goddard tells about in her book, Hope for Tomorrow. In his book, she recounts some of the counseling cases she's dealt with over her many years of practice. This particular case involved a young woman who was dealing with deep depression and a detachment from reality. The young woman was filled with anxiety and fear. She could not sleep at night because her mind was so full of disturbing thoughts. She felt totally alone, like God did not care that she existed. Dr. Goddard asked the woman if she knew of the peace that God promises us in the Bible. When the woman shook her head, Dr. Goddard took a slip of paper and wrote, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." Then Dr. Goddard left. The next day, she returned to find the young woman smiling and alert. Throughout the night, this woman had repeated that Bible verse over and over and over again. Her panic subsided, and she was able to go to sleep. Now she was able to see some kind of hope for the future. Each of us must face our own personal storm. Often the greatest adversary we face is our own fear. The fury of the storm, the fear of the disciples. And that brings us to the third element in this story, the faith that saves. Jesus rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And then he asked his disciples, "Why are you afraid? Have you no faith?" An interesting question. It just occurred to me just now. Because where did they go when they were terrified? To Jesus. Their faith wasn't strong enough to keep them from getting terrified, but when they got to that point, they knew where to go. We all have to ask ourselves that question from time to time. When the winds are howling and the waves are beating on our boat, why am I afraid? Why have I no faith? I know where to go. It's a message we all need to hear. There's one who quiets the wind and stills the storm because he has all power. If we listen, he will calm our spirits as well. Even in the fury of the storm, the fear of the disciples, but also the faith that saves must be recognized. Linda Sledge recalls a day when, from her childhood that she will never forget, she was playing in the sand on a Hawaiian beach near where she lived. Building towers of sand with her red shovel and bucket, she had wandered away from her parents. Suddenly, a great wave knocked her off her feet and drug her out into the ocean. She managed to get up on her feet again, but then the sand was flowing out from under her feet and taking her out to sea. And then another wave struck, and she had no footing. She cried out for her parents. All she could see was the vast ocean ahead of her. She thought she was doomed. Just then, two strong arms reached out from behind and pulled her to safety. "Don't be afraid," her father said. "I've been watching you all the time." Those are the words we need to hear and remember. He is not sleeping. He is watching over us. Why are we afraid? Have we no faith? He's watching us and reaching out to us always. Amen? Amen. Amen.